President Bola Ahmed Tinubu holds meeting with Dangote and Bill Gates in Asari. Court reaffirms order restraining NLC and TUC from embarking on strike. Only presidential election results failed to upload to IREV, INEC tells tribunal. And outside of Nigeria, Sierra Leone's opposition protests country's dire economic situation ahead of elections. Mali counts votes in referendum on new constitution ahead of elections. Now, Politics HQ tonight, we will be discussing the oil theft controversy. And my guest, Madam Annkio Briggs, Convener, Niger Delta Self-Determination. And also, Brigadier General Sani Usman, retired former Director of Army Public Relations, who will be joining us from Abuja. Stay with us, Politics HQ. We'll be right back. Now, the Nigerian military has denied it engages in oil theft in the Niger Delta region, following the allegations of Asari Dokubo, a Niger Delta leader and an ex-agitator. Dokubo, shortly after meeting with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, declared to support his administration in ensuring that oil theft is tackled in the region. The Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NEITI, revealed in April that the country has lost more than 16 trillion naira to oil theft in the last 12 years. Nearly 620 million barrels have been lost to oil thieves within the same period. Dokubo has said he will be willing to help the Nigerian government find the oil thieves as he points fingers at senior officials of the Nigerian military. Joining me on the show tonight is a foremost Niger Delta leader, Madam Annkio Briggs, and former Director of Public Relations of the Nigerian Army, Brigadier General Sani Usman. A warm welcome to you, Madam Annkio Briggs, and thanks for honoring our invitation on Politics HQ.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening.
Good evening. Now, Madam, being a native of the Niger Delta area, someone that is very familiar with the geography of the area, and also an activist, what first-hand experiences or observations can you share regarding the social, economic, and environmental impact of oil theft on local communities in your region?
Thank you very much. Definitely, the impact that my people and I feel are devastating impact. These have been going on for decades. Having grown up in the Niger Delta and having seen this for as far back as since 1970, let us say, 1960 actually, I will say that my people have been totally destroyed. Our way of life has been destroyed. Our livelihood has been destroyed. We are sick. We are invaded with all kinds of illnesses and sicknesses that have not even been identified because of the direct result of the polluted air that is coming from gas flaring, of the polluted fish and water that we drink that is coming from the pollution of the oil companies that has gone on for decades. And of course, there can be no denying that the involvement of oil theft, oil spillage, through oil theft and oil spillage from reckless exploration of the oil companies, both international and national. And then, of course, finally, the cooking of crude oil, which is as a result of the federal government, of past federal government, including this recent past, refusing to give licenses to the people of the Niger Delta region to be able to do the small-scale refinery or refining that we need to supply the needs of our people. My people who are in the creeks cannot easily get to buy a finished product because there is no filling stations in the middle of the sea, even though NNPC, as far back as when Obasanjo was in power, had allocated floating stations out to whom we don't know, and yet we don't have those floating stations. So my people pay far more higher price for kerosene, for petrol, and even for diesel. So definitely the issue of crude oil theft, the issue of pollution, we have unfortunately become the victims of both the thieves, the collaborators, the international thieves, and the mafia. The mafia for stealing oil in the Niger Delta. It's not just Nigerians alone. They have people that buy this oil from them on the black market, what they call the spot market, and they come into the creeks in barges and take these things out to the mothership up into the Atlantic Ocean, where, mind you, that is supposed to be protected or being guarded by the Nigerian government.
Now, Madam, from your opening statements and your assessment so far, would it be safe to say that, the discovery of oil in the Niger Delta has not really been a blessing for your people? And why is it?
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Absolutely. I can categorically say that fearlessly. I say that because when in 1958 or thereabout, before independence, the oil companies, an oil company, I was a little girl then, but I can recall, an oil company came in to my community as they went to other communities, and they were showing film footages of what life would be like for us when they have discovered and are able to get the oil out from our land, our creeks and our mangroves, and therefore our lives was going to be better. Now that was looking back as a little girl, that definitely was a lie. So there is nothing about the blessing that God has given to us, which we didn't create it. The resources is there, and my people have always lived in those places going back to the 18th, 17th century. So those blessings that has been set there for us in our ancestral land is actually a curse for the Niger Delta people. And that is very painful because it is not supposed to be a curse. The people that are receiving the blessings of the resources that is in my land and the land of my people are definitely not the Niger Delta people. And they're definitely not the government that runs the states that is in the Niger Delta. It is painful, it's unacceptable, and as long as I have breath in me, I will continue to talk about the injustice of it and resist and not accept what the federal government have taken away from us and what the oil companies have taken away from us with the 1999 Constitution by claiming the oil that is in the Niger Delta as belonging to the federal government.
We'll get to that issue of derivation and the Constitution later. But Madam Annkio Briggs, last week during his visit to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Asari Dokubo did drop a bombshell. He alleged that the Nigerian military is involved in oil theft, which is quite a serious accusation. What are some of the specific instances or patterns that support these claims? And is there any concrete evidence or testimonies that have emerged to substantiate these weighty allegations?
First of all, I want to inform Nigerians and the world and remind my people, the Niger Delta people, that Asari's statement is not, in my opinion, a bombshell. I do not see how it can be called a bombshell. That oil theft is been going on in the Niger Delta is not a secret. It has never been a secret. It is a fact that we have known. It is a fact that the fishermen have known in the creeks. And it came to light as early as when Obasanjo came into power. I won't go too much into that, what led to how it came to light. That would be a story for another day because it concerns my people and other actors and players. But the fact that Asari said that there are some elements in the, Asari said that the military is involved. Definitely, Asari is not the first person to say this, so it's not a bombshell. Even when Yaradua was alive, unfortunately, that man did not live to see what he had wanted to do in the Niger Delta, and we will never know, and I regret that. But going back to how it came to be that we actually saw what was going on as early as 2000, the year 2000, definitely the JTF, the military, the Air Force, the police were already in our creeks, so-called protecting the pipelines. And when Yaradua took over after Obasanjo's tenure, there was a time that Chief E.K. Clark organized the Ijaw people to go and pay Ijaw people across the Niger Delta, not just River State, Bayelsa Delta, River State, and Akwa Ibom Ijaws, which is about 6 or 7 local government areas in Akwa Ibom. Now, we followed him, we went with him to visit Yaradua, and it was a public visit. It was captured by television studios, and my humble self was asked to present to Yaradua. At that time, they called it bunkering. My humble self was asked to present what I understood as bunkering, and I made that presentation. So as far back as that time, that presentation was made. So neither Asari nor Peter Obi is the first person to have said that oil theft is going on in the Niger Delta. I go as far as saying that oil theft has been going on even when the Shell company were exploring, and even before after the independence of Nigeria. Serious oil theft was going on. Nigeria has no clue, and we will come to that. I have the fact here of how many barrels of crude oil a day is being lifted. Nigeria, as a government, is going by the estimation of OPEC of what Nigeria is supposed to produce, and then by the estimation that the oil companies and the Nigerian oil companies are giving to the federal government as to what is being lifted. So
sorry to interrupt you.
When the federal government...
Sorry to interrupt you, madam. I mean, this is quite an indictment in the Nigerian government and its petroleum industry. Since the discovery of oil in Olobiri in 1958, we've not developed capacity enough to know the amount of crude we're producing, and also what has been declared.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I will give you the in Punch on the 22nd of September, and these are facts I'm reading out to you now, so I have to look at what I've written. The 22nd of September, 2022, attributed 600,000 barrels per day to being stolen by the military. Now, this fact I'm giving to you is being issued on that day, as I said, and you can check this later, or if you like now. Pegasus has said this. This is Petroleum and Gas Senior Staff Association, and that the military should be held responsible for this. When he was making a presentation to the National Assembly, and the presentation was chaired by Senator Akpan Bassi. Wike, when he was the governor, had also named the brigade commander, the GOC, of the amphibious brigade in Rivers State. The Osifo, who is also part of this presentation, also said that the Nigerian government, or the oil NNPC, the Ministry of Petroleum, the agency, do not have an idea of how much oil is actually coming in. And so the estimation in my presentation here, the estimation that the federal government brings out now and again claiming that they have lost $2-point-something billion, which is the equivalent of 877 billion naira per whatever they have come up with. Definitely do not know how much. Now, the extractive industry, which the Transparency Initiative, NEITI, have also called on integrity to bear on the operations of the oil sector. And I'm quoting now. It says, it continued to call for meters to be installed on the wellhead to measure volume of crude. Now, when I hear that the secretary of this agency is calling for meter, common meter, ordinary meter, to be installed on wellheads, that a country like Saudi Arabia is able to, in today's world, track from Saudi Arabia, from when they open their valve to release the amount of oil they want to send out on a daily basis. They are able to physically, I don't know if you've ever seen that film or not, but they are able to physically trace the movement of the crude oil within a pipe as it leaves the where it is collected.
Yes.
Going through, you can actually see it. So now, if you've seen that, and then you hear Nigeria, the extractive industry in 2022 or 23 requesting, demanding, appealing that they install meters on wellheads, you begin to wonder how far back Nigeria is. And that, that thing he's asking for is to know how much oil is coming out. So I am qualified, therefore, based on these facts, to say categorically that Nigeria does not know how much oil it produces in a day because of the oil companies that are here. Mobil will tell them, Shell will tell them, the other indigenous companies will tell them, and then they will total up what they have been told before they will know how much oil is leaving the Niger Delta.
Yes, and the implication of this, madam, is that if you don't know what you're producing, it does leave room, the opaqueness leaves room for corruption. Now let's talk about the Niger Delta people now, because they're the most important in all of this. There's a derivation fund by the Nigerian law which imposes a transfer of 13% of all revenues to all producing states. You also have the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, but on ground, it's obvious that the wealth is not really being redistributed at all. Why is this the case, madam?
This is the case. This is the case because the people, the government, the federal government, and the politics that the federal government plays with the people of the Niger Delta, with, I must admit, some level of connivance with some people of the Niger Delta, which does not include me, with some people of the Niger Delta, some politicians of the Niger Delta who play party politics with the Niger Delta's people's suffering. When you bring in derivation, when you come into the Niger Delta and you take away whatever you said that you have taken, which in my opinion, and this can be open for argument for the future purposes, but we will be ready to do that. If you say, for instance, that you are taking 1.2 million barrels a day from the Niger Delta, and that the federal government is claiming that it belongs to the federal government. Now you say, you say that I am being given through derivation 13%. Fine. Now, that will leave 87% out of the 100 that you have taken. Now, I want to ask you, before you ask me what I'm doing with the 13%, you, the federal government, what are you doing with the 87%? Because because if truly we are running a federation, then the federal government, or even if you go back to the Constitution of 1963, which many people think should come back. But I have my own position on that. I think we should have a brand new constitution. If Mali can call for a referendum to have a new constitution, I think Nigeria should do the same. But we'll discuss this in the future. But now, coming back to the derivation, when you say I'm getting 13%, and you ask me to account for that 13%, which I should be able to account for my people, that is, if I am the one that is in charge. But now, what we have is the politics that does not allow for accountability, either at federal level or at state level. So it begins to, the Niger Delta people begin to become the victim of politics and politicians. That's one. Two, you mentioned the NDDC. The NDDC is not a gift from federal government or from anybody for that matter. The NDDC is an agency that a lot of us were involved in fighting for. And unfortunately, some key stakeholders who fought for the NDDC to be created by Obasanjo, yes, to establish it, have not lived to see where we are today. So the NDDC itself have become an ATM from the moment it was set up. From the moment the NDDC was set up, the federal government decided who is going to run the NDDC. It became a political appointment. It should not be a political appointment. It is a creation for the Niger Delta people, and therefore the failure of NDDC is directly as a connivance with our people who are politicians and fail to demand what should come to the Niger Delta region through the NDDC, and have connived with party politics to take away from me and my people what should directly come to us. So I always say that we should not allow the sentiments of the figure of derivation to cloud the injustice of the percentage that is coming to us and the percentage that goes to everybody else.
Now, Madam,
why we suffer the devastation of the oil and gas production, that is the 87% that goes to the federal government as its own derivation. In the 1963 Constitution, each region kept 50% of what it produced. Why could we in the Niger Delta, who changed the thinking that we were not entitled all of a sudden to 50% of the gas, to 50% of the crude oil? So who decided that we were entitled to this type of pollution that you're showing? Who decided that we are not entitled to live? Who decided, who made all these decisions? It is politics and politicians. It's not the fisherman,
just before we begin,
not Annkio Briggs, it is politics and politicians.
Now, Madam, just before we begin to wrap up this conversation, last year, when there was an explosion in the Niger Delta at one of the illegal refineries, the then president, pointed fingers at the people of the Niger Delta. In your opinion, what are the primary reasons behind the persistent blame placed on ordinary Niger Delta citizens for oil theft? How can their perspectives and voices be amplified to counter this narrative?
Definitely, when you say the ordinary Niger Delta person, you're referring to me. You're referring to my grand aunt and my grand uncle in the creeks, in my community, the fishermen in my community. It is really like right now. You just mentioned that there's been an oil spill that belongs to Shell. It is coming from Shell in Elene government area in Rivers State right now. It started over the weekend, and I have not physically been there, but I have spoken to some people in the community. Immediately this spill occurred, the oil company have already said, without even going in, have already said that it is that the spill is sabotage. Now, you can't say a spill is sabotage when it has just happened, when the pipeline in question is probably 50 years, yes, it's 50 years old, and without any observation with the agencies that should be there, with the NGOs, with human rights organizations, with the NNPC agencies and all of that, and the community members. You cannot just get up and say it is that it is done by pipeline vandalization. So immediately you now put the community on the path to protect itself and to protect its community. No, it is not. It is unfair and continues to be unacceptable that government, the agencies that are supposed to protect the interests of the community, NEMA, NEP, or all of these organizations, are now going to say that this is, without actually physically being there, that this is caused by the people, yes, by the community. So even the one you reference is unacceptable. If you're referring to the one that happened in Bayelsa, which I myself was amongst the people that visited, one well-known television broadcast reporter was there, and some other television houses were there. Nimo Bassi was there, Maurice Alagwa was there, King Dakolo was there, and the oil company refused to allow the boats that the king, myself, Maurice Alagwa, and lawyers and journalists, and Nimo Bassi were in, to go as close as possible to actually observe if what they are claiming is true. They allowed other people to go in, and they came back and said that they have started to do something about it. But I can't say so because I didn't see it. They didn't allow us to go on to see it. So definitely I resist and will continue to resist the desire by federal government and the association of politicians to continue to put the blame of the suffering of the Niger Delta people and the pollution of our environment. There is no doubt that a few of our people are involved. But when you compare it to the damage we have suffered for over 60 years and still ongoing, I definitely refuse to accept that my people should be held accountable. The federal government, the state government, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Petroleum, NNPC, whether it is now a privately owned company or it is not, all of those people should be held accountable and responsible, not my people.
Now, Madam, you've been in the forefront of activism for your people in the Niger Delta for quite some time now. What are your recommended strategies to address the root causes of oil theft, such as poverty, unemployment, environmental degradation? How can sustainable development and alternative livelihood opportunities be promoted in the Niger Delta? When you sit down with stakeholders in the government, what sort of recommendations do you give them and advice?
You see, truthfully, having seen what's in the 1999 Constitution, and having worked in this environment of fighting for justice for my people for over 20 years, I know for a fact that the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, is not in any way, shape, or form in favor of the things you have mentioned for my people, or for any other, I mean for any other people, but I'm speaking directly to the people of the Niger Delta, to the oil-producing region of the Niger Delta. Until we change the Constitution, until Nigeria is actually a true federation where we have a federated government, until a state is able to control its resources and pay tax to federal government and keep what it is in its land and what it can generate for itself to develop the Niger Delta region, we can't develop the Niger Delta region because where it will take, say in Lagos, where you would take, hypothetically, where you would take maybe $1 million to build maybe 2 miles of good quality road, it will take you 10 times as much to build the same quality road in the Niger Delta, because you have to go through the mangroves. Up till today, my people are still going to the next community by canoe. And then we have to confront the so-called JTF that are protecting what you're showing right now. And so it becomes very difficult for any kind of development to come to my people. And so it is very easy to then find ourselves in a position where people are able to come and take advantage of the suffering and the neglect of the Niger Delta people by what is going on in the Niger Delta. There is a huge mafia, both national and international, involved in the oil theft. You saw Tom Polo some months ago making his own statement that the military is involved in this. We saw the head of NNPC a few weeks ago go into the creeks of the Niger Delta and claiming and saying that they are not aware that this type of thing is going on in the Niger Delta. I mean, it's like a man who owns a restaurant, who has people cooking in his restaurant and serving food, and yet he's claiming that he doesn't know that the people who are eating the food are not paying for the food. So how then is he generating the money every day to go to market, to cook and open his restaurant? So that's exactly what's going on in the Niger Delta. I think that politicians, people in the industry, whether they be Niger Delta people who are just picking the crumbs, whether they be non-Niger Delta people who are building the biggest refineries in the world with Nigeria buying into it, while we abandon three refineries in the Niger Delta, where we don't allow the ports in the Niger Delta to bring in goods and things like that. When you consider all these things, you can see the terrible and unacceptable injustice that we suffer, and to continuously place before us the issue of NDDC, the issue of Ministry of Niger Delta, amnesty. What about the Development Commission of the Northeast? What about all the money that has gone into that commission? What about the corruption that is there? Who is talking about those? Why should we have people that are not from the Niger Delta on the board of the NDDC? Why should the government pick people that have failed in politics? Maybe someone who has failed to win a seat, a Senate seat, will now be made the MD of the NDDC, or somebody who has failed to become a governor will now be made the minister of Niger Delta Development Commission. These are all things that we fought for, and the politicians did not fight for these things. So how come they continue, the government of Nigeria continue to use these agencies to do what they want for themselves as politicians and as party members?
Well, glad to have you tonight on the program. And the country birthed a new administration a few weeks ago. Now, my question is to you. This question is coming off the back of the struggles of the Niger Delta people that Ken Saro-Wiwa died for this cause. And you've continued to be a consistent and persistent voice. My question is, how can the voices and perspectives of the Niger Delta communities be better integrated into policy discussions at all levels of government, at the Senate, into decision-making processes related to oil theft, the standard of living in the Niger Delta, and its consequences? How do you continue to have a voice at the table?
Well, we've never had a voice at the table. I mean, I think I've actually detailed that. We've never had a voice at the table. See, that I have a senator representing me from my senatorial district does not necessarily guarantee, and has never guaranteed actually, the fact that the voices of our people are heard. Because if the voices of our people have been heard, then there will be no role for me to play. It is because our people have failed. That is why people like me take our time to do what we are doing, because yes, there is election, yes, they are voted in. But the question is, are they doing what they are supposed to be doing? I mean, there is no point in fighting to be a member of the committee set up in the National Assembly, for instance, for oil and gas. And then you say, oh, because Mr. X is from River State, Mr. B is from Bayelsa State, he's representing the senatorial district of oil-producing community and oil-producing state. Therefore, let's make him a member of the committee. Therefore, let us make him the chairman of the committee. What does that, exactly what does that bring to the Niger Delta? Absolutely, absolutely nothing. In 20, I think it was 2012, I think, there was, or a bit earlier, my NGO organized a huge protest, a huge protest, a non-violent protest to the National Assembly about the environment. And the then president of the National Assembly, David Mark, sent out the chairman of the Environmental Committee, which was then Saraki, was the chairman of the Environmental Committee. Now, the chairman of the Environmental Committee came outside, took the complaints from us, and took it inside and promised to visit the Niger Delta. And yes, it was 2012. And on the 31st or 30th of September, I beg your pardon, he arrived with a handful of people from his committee and started a visitation into the Niger Delta on the 1st of October, Independence Day. Can I shock you by telling you that even though Saraki is from Kwara State, and he's the chairman of that committee, and it was an environmental, yes, and it's an environmental issue based on the protests that I organized with others. And when they came, not one member of his committee that was from Niger Delta followed him to that visitation. The people that visited with him were not from the Niger Delta. Now, that shows you what I'm trying to express here.
It goes beyond the individual appointments. You need to get somebody that really cares about the issues.
Yes, absolutely. So what I'm trying to say, therefore, is that my people have to be able to take it upon themselves to know that if the representative we have sent to Abuja is not representing us, then we have the right to remove them. And we must therefore be able to remove them. There is no point in complaining and still hailing these people that have failed us as honorable, as this, as that. There is nothing honorable when you're not representing your people. There is everything dishonorable about your responsibility, failing your responsibility to represent your people and represent them very well. I'm not a politician, and I don't want to be a politician, but I am interested in what politicians do and say in my name, and I will continue to be interested until they learn to do the right thing. But the only way they can learn to do the right thing by us is by me and my people, making them know that if they don't, we will take them away. And so if my people don't do that, then unfortunately, the blame will come back to my people for not being able to stand up for ourselves. But Nigeria must change. The attitude of the federal government have to change. The federal government cannot continue to hold on to all the things that it is holding on to that should go, that should be the responsibility of state government. The federal government has no business having a federal hospital in River State. If River State is able to be able to explore for its own oil, explore for its own gas, and pay federal government the tax. I don't buy this argument that, oh, if you put them in charge, that they will still be corrupt. Yes, that is possible, but then let it be that we let them to be corrupt, as opposed to allowing the corruption to come from all the way from the top to the bottom.
Yes.
It's not, the corruption is not coming from the bottom to the top. The corruption is coming from the top to the bottom. And that is the problem that we have in Nigeria. Nigerians must take responsibility for what they find unacceptable and make sure that the people who claim to be politicians and representing us are actually doing what they are supposed to do. That's why people like me exist.
Now, Madam Annkio Briggs, just before we begin to wrap up our conversation shortly, in your opinion, how can the Nigerian government strike a balance between addressing the security concerns associated with oil theft and also fostering sustainable development in the Niger Delta? Are there any successful models that you propose or any studies that can serve as examples?
Well, I mean, the fact that there is no other place on earth that is as devastated today in the world the way Niger Delta is devastated from the exploration of oil and gas. Now, the neglect, the lack of development, the corruption that has led to lack of education, that has led to lack of accountability from government, that has led to imposed poverty, the poverty of the mind of the people, the poverty, physical poverty of our people, that does not allow our people to develop and does not encourage the people of the Niger Delta to develop. That has made the people to think that actually there is nothing that they can do about it. As I said as I have said during this conversation, it is the responsibility of the people who say they are politicians to deliver on this, on the benefits of what is called democracy. Now, we cannot. The study that should be done would be a first-time study for the Niger Delta region to find out, apart from what we, the people who have suffered it, have said, what can we do as a people? What can government do? What can politicians do to make sure that development actually comes to a region like the Niger Delta region? In 1958, when there was a discussion in England with our people, of which the minorities had a discussion, and it was agreed by the Wellington Report in United Kingdom before independence. And the quote is that the Niger Delta region is backward, is undeveloped, not even it is not developed at all. And therefore, an agency was created. It was suggested that an agency be set up for that region because the region is hard to develop. Now, this is not something that was concluded by the Harold Dababriers that went there to represent us. It was concluded by the colonial government that was representing the British government.
As far back as 1958.
Yes, and an agency was created and said to have been created for the Niger Delta people, called the River Basin Development Authority, something like that. Now, I tell you, yes, I tell you that River Basin Authority was categorized as a Class A authority, which meant that it had already agreed on the level of funding that was to be given to that agency, that authority. Now, by the time Nigeria became independent, we saw that the agency had been moved from a Class A agency, which needed the funding and needed it immediately. We had been moved from that to the 4th ranking. And not only were we moved from that to the 4th ranking, these river basin authorities were replicated also outside of the Niger Delta. And that is the same story we have today with the NDDC, with the Ministry of Niger Delta, and with the amnesty program. Everybody is shouting, why should Niger Delta people have NDDC? Why shouldn't we have NDDC? The money that NEMA is using for emergency things up somewhere else in Nigeria is coming from the oil that we suffer for. The Northeast Development funding is being paid for from the oil that we suffer from. And so when we begin to talk about these things, we begin to feel the pain of the injustice that we're talking about. I'm telling you that agencies have been created since 1958 to deceive the Niger Delta people. From the basin authorities, we moved into other authorities. We moved into NDDC.
Minister of the Niger Delta and others.
The Ministry of the Niger Delta, you set up a Ministry of the Niger Delta and you put it in Abuja, and then you give it the so-called federal character. You can't create a ministry for my people, keep it in Abuja, give it federal character coloration, and say it's for Niger Delta. It's not from, if it's for Niger Delta, only Niger Delta people should be working in the ministry.
Okay, Madam, I wish we really could go on. You've spoken very, very well on this issue of oil theft, but also the advocacy you do in the Niger Delta. I would like to say a very big thank you to you, Madam Annkio Briggs, convener of the Niger Delta Self-Determination Movement. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight on Politics HQ.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.